Warm greetings. Today is Saturday, August 15, 2026. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia. At the time of recording this video, it is 9:45 in the morning, local time, in the Eastern Caribbean, where over the past few days we have been monitoring two disturbances that had chances of development. However, the outlook has changed significantly over the past 2 days. First, we have a strong tropical wave that is already over the waters of the Eastern Caribbean Sea and south of Puerto Rico. This disturbance was Invest 92 and at one point had a high chance of tropical cyclone development. However, it never managed to acquire tropical organization before reaching the Caribbean and is now in an area where wind shear is very strong and will not allow it to develop. This is why the National Hurricane Center is no longer assigning it any chances of development. In the end, this disturbance brought some much-needed rainfall to the southern half of the Lesser Antilles, while for the northern half, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, unfortunately, rainfall accumulations are not expected to be significant. On the other hand, what is still Invest 94 is now near 43 degrees west longitude and is also encountering conditions that have prevented it from achieving tropical cyclone development. In fact, in the latest National Hurricane Center outlook, the chances of development were lowered to just 10% compared to the 50% it had yesterday. So everything seems to indicate that Invest 94, just like what was Invest 92, will not manage to develop as it approaches the Caribbean. It is very likely that during the day today the National Hurricane Center will no longer give it any chances of development during the next 7 days. And regarding what was Invest 92, notice that some strong wind gusts are forecast for portions of the northern half of the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico during the day today, Saturday, with gusts that could range between 30 and 40 miles per hour. However, rainfall will be quite limited. The highest accumulations projected by the American model would be for the islands of the Lesser Antilles, with between 1 and 2 inches or between 50 and 60 millimeters. In addition, notice that little precipitation is also expected for the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. Let's look at the latest track projections for Invest 94, which is the one that is still located halfway between the Caribbean and Africa. And notice that overall it is forecast to move toward the northeastern Caribbean. However, we should not be concerned because the specialized intensity models have changed significantly, and basically no model develops this disturbance into a tropical depression or tropical storm. So what we have seen with these two tropical waves is a clear example of how the El Niño phenomenon can influence tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic. In summary, we had two very healthy tropical waves with chances of development. However, the subsidence or atmospheric stability that predominates between the Caribbean Sea and Africa was enough to limit their tropical organization. And any system that does not manage to develop in the tropical Atlantic will very likely eventually also encounter the strong wind shear across the Caribbean Sea. And if these conditions persist, it is very likely that the forecast for a rather inactive season will be fulfilled. This is despite the tropical Atlantic and northeastern Atlantic having above normal ocean surface temperatures. However, once again, the El Niño phenomenon creates subsidence represented by the yellow colors in this image, which will make tropical cyclone formation more difficult. And notice in green and blue that the Pacific region is the one favored for tropical cyclone activity this year due to the warming of the equatorial waters from the El Niño phenomenon. I wanted to show you this graph where we can see the instability across the tropical Atlantic, that is, between the Caribbean and Africa. And notice that since May the values have remained indicative of a rather stable atmosphere, which does not favor the formation of rainfall and low-pressure systems, therefore making tropical cyclone formation more difficult. It is very likely that during the next few months and through the peak of the season we will continue with values below normal. And I can tell you in advance that during the next few days and the next few weeks, several tropical waves will continue to emerge from Africa, and we will see whether any of them manages to achieve some type of tropical organization, or whether they will eventually be able to survive the unfavorable conditions they will encounter in the tropical Atlantic. And if a tropical depression or storm develops, it will eventually very likely encounter strong wind shear. In fact, the only opportunity for development that we may perhaps see with Invest 94 is when it eventually moves toward portions of the southwestern Atlantic, where conditions could definitely be more favorable for perhaps a tropical cyclone to form. As I have mentioned during the past few months, this is the area where most of the tropical cyclone activity will probably be concentrated this year. However, remember that this does not mean that we are out of danger. A single storm or hurricane that forms and affects us could cause a disaster. The important thing is that for now we can remain calm, and unfortunately significant rainfall events are not anticipated to alleviate the drought affecting the Caribbean and Central America. And with this video, I am ending the special coverage of Invest 92 and Invest 94. It is very likely that during the next few days I will begin talking about the Eastern Pacific region, where considerable tropical cyclone activity is expected during the next 10 days, and of course, I will continue monitoring any strong tropical wave that emerges from Africa. So if you like this content, I wanted to invite you to give this video a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so that you receive notifications whenever I record new videos. See you later.